Now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into a time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
An hour of high adventure, Harry Bartell starring in an episode of Escape from 75 years ago, December 10th, 1947. The short story adaptation of An Occurrence-at-own-creek-brid. And we thank you for tuning in on this Saturday. This is the 10th day of December. This is the 344th day of the year, 21 days remaining until we get to 2023. Isaac Newton's derivation of Kepler's law from his theory of gravity contained in the paper De Mortuum Corporum in Gyrum is read to the Royal Society by Edmund Halley. And whoa, I hope he read it better than I did. Happy birthday, Mississippi. You became the 20th state of the Union on this date in 1817. Emory College, chartered in Oxford, Georgia in 1836. It's now Emory University. Wyoming, granting women the right to vote on this date in 1869. The first Nobel Prizes awarded on this date in 1901. President Teddy Roosevelt won the Nobel Peace Prize on this date in 1906, becoming the first American to win a Nobel Prize. The Downtown Athletic Club trophy, given to halfback Jay Berwanger of the University of Chicago on this date in 1935, it would be renamed the Heisman Trophy. The UN General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights on this date in 1948. That's why this is also International Human Rights Day. Let's see. Martin Luther King Jr. became the youngest African American ever to win a Nobel Peace Prize on this date in 1964.
I accept this award on behalf of the civil rights movement, which is moving with determination and a majestic scorn for risk and danger, to establish a reign of freedom and a rule of justice.
King was just 35 years old. In 1978, Prime Minister of Israel Menachem Begin and President of Egypt Anwar Sadat jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. In 2006, 1 million Lebanese opposition supporters gathered in downtown Beirut, calling for the government to resign. It was back in 2019, Democrats in the House announced formal charges against President Trump that accused him of abusing power and obstructing Congress, making him only the fourth president in history to face impeachment. He was acquitted in the Senate. And it was on this date in 2021, a widespread, deadly, and violent tornado outbreak slammed the central, midwestern, and southern regions of the U.S. 89 people killed by the tornadoes, most of the fatalities occurring in Kentucky, where a single tornado killed 57 people, injured hundreds of others. Passing away on this date in history, the founder of the Nobel Prize, Alfred Nobel, also baseball's Walter Johnson, writer Damon Runyon, soul singer Otis Redding, filmmaker Ed Wood, actor Freeman Gosden from Amos and Andy fame, also violinist Jascha Heifetz, industrialist Armand Hammer, man who sang To the Walls, country singer Farron Young, Hello Walls, Shirley Hemphill, also Senator Eugene McCarthy, Richard Pryor, who is a funny man, but his demons. Also passing away 2 years ago today, Tiny Lister. You remember him as Zeus from the WWE. And the Monkees, Michael Nesmith, who passed away a year ago today. This is the birthday to poet Emily Dickinson, actress Una Thurman, journalist Chet Huntley, composer Morton Gould, actor Harry Locke, actress Dorothy Lamour, Dan Blocker, you remember him as Hoss Cartwright in Bonanza. Actor Tommy Reddick, also remembered from early TV, being in Lassie. Ku Sakamoto, who had such a wonderful, beautiful song, and it was called Sukiyaki. Go figure. Also from Old Yeller and the Shaggy Dog, Tommy Kirk, who passed away last year at the age of 79. Also from Chad and Jeremy, Chad Stewart, who passed away 2 years ago at the age of 79. Now, what else do we have to tell you about? Oh, we also mentioned composer Alexander Courage, who talks about writing the Star Trek theme.
Bill Hatch was the head of the music at Desilu, and Star Trek was a Desilu production. So he said, how would you like to write a theme for this thing? And we'll see, if Roddenberry likes it. When I was a little kid and I used to listen to the radio, there was a song by Richard Whiting called Beyond the Blue Horizon. And it had a long tune. And underneath this tune, they used to have usually an accordion player or something like that. You're going ticka 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 ticka. You see, about triple time. You see, so on, with this long tune and all of this ticka 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 underneath it, the train. I thought, well, I should have a long thing that goes out into space, and it keeps going out into space, and everything's going to be long, and it goes, lyrically, as it were, without lyrics, over a fast-moving accompaniment, and that's it.
From the Television Academy Foundation, METVLegends.org, that is Alexander Courage on writing the theme for Star Trek. Alexander Courage, born on this date back in 1919. We lost him in 2008. Happy birthday number 70 for the original television presenter from England, from Whose Line Is It Anyway, Clive Anderson. He is 70. Also for Laurie Partridge and the Partridge Family. And from L.A. Law, Susan Day is 70 years old as well. From the TV show Fame, Nia Peoples is 61, celebrity chef Bobby Flay, 57, and actress-singer Raven Simone is 37. Those just a few of the people who celebrate the 10th day of December as their birthday, and if this happens to be your birthday...
Hi, we're the Four Freshmen, and we just want to say... Happy birthday to you!
And from 75 years ago, December 10th, 1947, Harry Bartell in an episode of Escape, an occurrence at Owl-Creek-Bridge. That's coming up next on this Saturday, Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station. Thanks for spending part of your Saturday with us here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now, Escape. As it goes back 75 years, December 10th, 1947, an adaptation of the short story, An Occurrence at Owl-Creek-Bridge.
You are standing on a bridge over Owl Creek, a noose around your neck. You have but a few seconds left to live. A few seconds left to plan your escape.
Escape, produced and directed by William N. Robeson, and carefully contrived to free you from the four walls of today for a half hour of high adventure.
Tonight, we escape to the war between the states and a muddy stream in Alabama as we recall one of the great short stories in American literature, An Occurrence at Owl-Creek-Bridge by Ambrose Bierce.
A man stood upon a railroad bridge in northern Alabama, looking down through the ties at the swift water 20 feet below. The man's hands were behind his back, the wrist bound with a cord. A rope closely encircled his neck. It was attached to a stout cross timber above his head, and the slack fell to the level of his knees. He watched a piece of dancing driftwood racing down the current beneath his feet. He thought,
if I could just free my hands, I might throw off this noose and dive into the creek. If I swam underwater, I'd be safe from their bullets. If my wind held out, I could make the southern bank, take to the woods, and get away home.
Peyton Farquhar, Alabama planter, stood at the end of a plank. A captain of the Union Army and a sergeant stood at the other end. When they stepped aside, the plank would tip upward, and Peyton Farquhar, Confederate spy, would slip between the ties to hang above the muddy water of Owl Creek until dead. Even in this far outpost of Sherman's march to the sea, the formalities of death are observed by these men who are most familiar with him. The captain's company is drawn stiffly at attention along the tracks on the northern side of the bridge. The lieutenant stands erect on the bank of the stream, the point of his bared saber scraping the gravel on the roadbed. Peyton Farquhar is being ushered into the Confederate beyond with every Union amenity. The captain stands aside. Now only the weight of the bulky sergeant counterbalances Peyton Farquhar at the end of his thin board.
They say that this is a moment when all the past events of your life tumble into your memory. But how could anyone know? Who has come back from the dead to tell what dying is like? I don't recall any childhood memories now. The past does not engulf me in this naked moment. I'm only aware of what's here, now. Those Yankees lined up on the bank. His captain's tired eyes. That turkey buzzard circling up there, waiting for me. And that noise. That beating, driving sound like a distant engine. A pump. The roll of thunder on a summer evening. Coming closer. Getting louder. Choking me.
It's your heart, of course, that you hear, stepping up its cadence, pounding under the forced draft of fear. Now you see nothing, remember nothing, sense nothing, but the strangling, suffocating beat of your own heart, throbbing its final protest. You stand there, erect.
The work is nearly at an end now. The captain draws his sword, flourishes it to a carry, sings out a command.
Company! Parade! Rest!
The men on the bank smartly spread their legs, thrust hands forward over the rifle barrels. The sergeant on the end of the plank takes one step to the left. The plank tips forward. And Peyton Farquhar drops between the timbers of Owl Creek Bridge.
It takes longer to tell it. As you drop downward, you lose consciousness. You are as one already dead. Then you awaken sharply in pain to feel, not to think, just to feel. The cutting pressure on your throat, the agonies of pulsating fire shooting from your neck downward. To feel the fullness, the congestion, the head bursting with suffocation. Distantly, beyond, outside of yourself, you hear a splash. Remotely you sense cool, wet, green darkness. The rope has broken. You have fallen into the stream. Now thinking returns slowly. You know for the moment you are safe from drowning, because the rope around your neck tightly keeps the water from your lungs.
Then I shall die hanging at the bottom of a river. And that's absurd. If I could get my hands free. I must get my hands free. Come, Peyton. They can't lick you. Try again. Once more. Good boy, the rope's given. Again. Try once more. That does it, my boy. Now, the rope around your neck. You must breathe when you come to the surface. You must breathe quickly. For if they haven't hanged you and they fail to drown you, you can't let them shoot you. Loosen that rope around your neck. You must get it loose. Now.
It takes so much longer to tell. You are now in the fullest possession of your senses, and again time stops. You feel the ripples of the water upon your face, and hear their separate sounds as they strike. You see the trees on the bank, and the leaves, and the veining of each leaf, and the very insects on them. The locusts, the brilliant-bodied flies, the gray spiders stretching their webs from twig to twig, the prismatic colors of the dewdrops upon a million blades of grass. You hear the humming of the gnats, the beating of the dragonfly's wings, the strokes of the water spider's legs. A fish slides beneath your eyes, and you hear the rush of its body parting the water. All this you see and hear in an incalculably infinite instant of time. Then you hear something else.
There he is! Down there! Quick! Somebody! Come! Ready!
You dive deeply, but above the ringing in your ears, you hear the volley of the rifles. And as you rise toward the surface, you meet shining bits of metal, singularly flattened, the distorted and spent bullets, oscillating slowly downward past you. One catches in your collar, and it feels uncomfortably warm. You snatch it out, and this gray piece of Yankee lead reminds you of the gray uniform of the soldier who was responsible for you being here. You recall that it was only night before last when the soldier had ridden up the driveway as you and your wife sat under the magnolia trees in the cool twilight.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Corporal.
Wonder if I might trouble you for a glass of water, sir.
Why, of course,
Don't disturb yourself, Peyton. I'll go fetch it.
You're most kind, ma'am. If you'll just indicate the well...
Nonsense. You just sit a spell with my husband. You look as if you could do with some rest.
Yes, ma'am. Reckon I could.
I'll be back in a jiffy.
Thank you, ma'am.
Whose command are you with, Corporal?
Colonel Tolliver, sir. 13th North Carolina.
We get so little news down here. How are things going at the front?
Not good, sir. The Yankees are getting ready for another advance. They're repairing the railroad. Got it in shape almost to Owl-Creek-Bridge. And they got an outpost there. Once they can run the trains beyond the bridge, there's nothing to stop them between here and Atlanta.
Then why hasn't the bridge been destroyed?
The military couldn't get near it. A civilian might.
Owl-Creek-Bridge. That's not far from here, is it?
Less than 20 miles.
You say they have an outpost there. On which side?
T'other side. Nothing on this side but a couple of pickets, half-mile out on the railroad. And a single sentinel at this end of the bridge.
And that bridge is important?
Sure is.
What if it were destroyed?
Hold up the Yankees for several weeks.
Suppose a man, a civilian like myself, should elude the picket post and get the better of the sentinel. What could he accomplish?
Well, I was there a week ago, just before we had to pull out. There's a heap of driftwood come down in last winter's flood and caught on the trestle at this end. Looked mighty dry and tendery to me.
I see.
A fellow with enough gumption might get through and set fire to it. It ought to burn like tow.
Yes, it should.
Of course, a fellow'd have to have plenty of gumption. The Union commanders promised to hang any civilian caught fooling around the railroad.
Here's your water, Corporal. Right out of the spring house.
Thank you kindly, ma'am. My, it's cool and nice.
And here's a smidgen of cornbread. I thought you might be hungry.
I'm mighty grateful, ma'am. It's ladies like you that keeps the South together and fighting these days.
Oh, my, what a nice compliment.
It certainly is.
Well, reckon I better hit the leather. I got a lot of riding ahead of me tonight.
Good luck to you, Corporal, and thank you for the information.
You'd be taking a chance, sir, but you couldn't do a greater service for your country.
I'll remember that, Corporal.
Goodbye, ma'am.
Goodbye, Corporal.
Goodbye, sir. Many thanks.
Goodbye.
Peyton, what was he talking about?
What, my dear?
The corporal. What did he mean by service to your country and taking a chance?
Oh, nothing.
Peyton, tell me.
It was nothing, really, my dear.
Peyton Farquhar, if you're fixing to take any chances for our country, I want to know about it. Now, you just speak your piece.
There's nothing to say except I'll be going away for a day or two on a little trip.
Is it dangerous, Peyton?
Not very.
You'll be back.
Yes, my dear. I promise you, I'll be back.
You break the surface of Owl Creek for a second time. And now you're much further downstream, further away from the Union soldiers on the bridge reloading their guns.
the ramrods flashing in the morning sun.
That captain won't make the same mistake again. He'll order them to fire at will. Heaven help me, I cannot dodge him.
Another more terrible sound, cannon. They've trained a cannon on you.
And close. Next time they'll use a charge of grape. Rifles and grape covering the water from bank to bank. I'm done for then.
Then something seemed to grab you, and you're whirled round and round, spinning like a waterlogged top. You're caught in a vortex, a whirlpool.
And the conclusion of Escape from 75 years ago, December 10th, 1947, an occurrence at Owl-Creek-Bridge, follows the news on this Saturday Classic Radio Theater. Thank you for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater on your favorite station. An episode of Escape, an occurrence at Owl-Creek-Bridge, starring Harry Bartell, as it was originally broadcast on Wednesday, December 10th, 1941. In the newspapers of that Wednesday, 75 years ago, these were some of the headlines. Russia and France expelled each other's repatriation commissions yesterday, and Moscow broke off trade negotiations, ruining France's chance for 300,000 tons of badly needed Soviet wheat. A sharply worded Russian note broadcast by the Moscow radio also contained a threat to terminate the 1944 French-Russian alliance. The rupture in trade talks and repatriation relations came as the communist-dominated French General Confederation of Labor in effect bowed to a government ultimatum and called off the paralyzing strike wave, which at one time left 3 million workers idle. Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, the Republican of Massachusetts, last night described President Truman and Secretary of State Marshall as the true voice of America and urged them to take the lead in combating anti-American propaganda abroad. Lodge saying on the radio program America's Town Meeting of the Air, the world radio and press are largely open to them. They should function as the voice. He discussed the question, how can we combat anti-American propaganda in Europe, with Congressman Francis Case, the Republican of South Dakota, Major General William J. Donovan, the former director of the Office of Strategic Services, and the Reverend William H. Mellish, the national chairman of the Council of American-Soviet Friendship. Lodge saying, to reach the mass mind where public opinion is formed and where our main efforts against communist clannish lies must be directed, we should buy time on foreign broadcasts and space in foreign newspapers. The administration put President Truman's anti-inflation program into concrete legislative proposals for the first time yesterday and laid before Congress a bill which would give the government broad powers to ration food and fuel. The measure also would authorize the government to allocate iron and steel to the most essential users, to control inventories of scarce material, and to continue export controls until March 31st of 1950. The House voted with a roar of approval last night to make President Truman responsible for easing the impact of foreign aid on U.S. prices and supplies. The House action came as government officials told a reporter that $1.7 billion has been trimmed from previous administration estimates of the cost of financing European recovery over a 4-year period, to its $590 million bill authorizing stopgap aid until the 4-year Marshall Plan can start working. The House added an amendment directing the President to make the regulations governing foreign and relief buying so as to reduce the drain on commodities scarce in this country and to cushion the effect of the foreign purchases to prevent U.S. prices from being forced upward. General George C. Kenney foresaw last night, in the event of another war, the use of weapons more effective than the atom bomb. The chief of the Strategic Air Command, in an address before the Michigan Post of the Army Ordnance Association, discussed a theoretical attack on Detroit and said, I think probably most of you have seen the pictures of the Bikini atom bomb test. If we get into another war, that is one of the weapons we will be concerned with. There are plenty of others, some of which appear to be much cheaper, more efficient, and easier to produce in quantities. And those some of the day's top news stories, as reported in the newspapers of Wednesday, December 10th, 1947, on your radio Escape, an occurrence at Owl-Creek-Bridge. And we'll hear the conclusion in just a few moments on this Saturday Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox here on your favorite radio station. Well, on Sunday's Classic Radio Theater, we're going to go back 88 years for an episode of the West Coast program Calling All Cars from December 11th, 1934. A cup of coffee and some strychnine. A murder has taken place in a schoolhouse. That's coming up on Sunday's Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. But now the conclusion of Escape from 75 years ago, December 10th, 1947. Harry Bartell starring in An Occurrence at Owl-Creek-Brid.
The water, the banks, the distant bridge, the soldiers become indistinct blurs. And again, you're helpless. You feel dizzy and sick to your stomach. Just as you felt last night when you crept up the bank toward the lone sentinel on the south end of the bridge and discovered that the sentinel was not alone.
There he is, boys. Grab him.
Get him, Sergeant.
Ah, well, Mr. Peyton Farquhar, we've been expecting you.
How did you know my
we
name
got
was...
ways.
But look here, I'm a civilian.
Save your breath and thank your maker we didn't shoot you in the back. Well, we don't do things that way up north. You'll get a trial. Everything fair and square. Bring him along, men.
The whirlpool spins faster and faster. A sharp piece of driftwood tears at your coat. The churning brown water chokes you. You know there is nothing you can do. As you had known it last night, when they shoved you into a tent near the bridge to face the infantry captain with the tired eyes.
Here he is, sir. Right on schedule.
Good work, Sergeant. Is this the man, Lieutenant?
That's him.
What? You're the corporal who stopped at my plantation last night.
That's right, Mr. Farquhar. But I'm not with the 13th North Carolina Volunteers.
Mr. Farquhar, this is Lieutenant Saltonstall, Intelligence Officer, 5th Massachusetts Regulars.
You've trapped me. You deliberately led me into a trap. I'm a civilian and a planter.
Yes, and also a Southern patriot, caught in the act of espionage.
You can't prove it.
We don't have to.
This is the most despicable, the most... This proves once more that honor is a stranger in the North.
I'm too tired to listen to a recital of the code of a Southern gentleman, Mr. Farquhar. I'm afraid the distinction between your ethics and my lack of them would escape me this evening.
But why have you done this? Why have you deliberately trapped me?
The best way to eliminate civilian resistance is to lure it into the open. You fell for the bait. Too bad.
Now, look here. It's my constitutional right
Which Constitution? The Constitution of the United States or Jeff Davis's?
You insulting Yankees.
Remember your manners, sir.
I demand a trial.
You've just had it. Post a guard over him, Sergeant.
Yes.
We'll hang him in the morning.
Something tears at your face, scratching, and you realize that the whirling has stopped. You open your eyes. You're lying on the southern bank of the stream, out of sight of your enemies. Safe. The gravel which has scratched your cheek now seems soft as new-picked cotton. The forest around you is a garden of luscious beauty, reeking with the heavy perfume of freedom. Even the whiz and rattle of the final charge of grape screaming through the treetops seems a benediction from the baffled cannoneer. You leap to your feet and run into the woods, south, towards home. Your neck is swollen and throbbing with pain. You carry it cocked toward your left shoulder as you push through the matted brush. All morning you tear your way through the undergrowth. Your jacket is tattered and your face crisscrossed with bloody scratches from the brambles. Every few moments you stop. You stop to listen for the sound of dogs. But all you hear is the sleepy buzz of the forest. And the blood throbbing through your heated brain brings another thought, which is an insult. No dogs. You are not even important enough to the Yankees for dogs. It's nearly noon now, and for half an hour you've been plunging through a swamp, waist-deep in green ooze. Your neck hurts constantly. Your head throbs and your tongue is thick. It tastes like brown cotton. Gnats swarm before your eyes, catching in your eyelids. Mosquitoes buzz in your ears, drill deep in your hands and swollen neck. You cannot go any longer. You slow down. You stop. You reach toward a palmetto root for support, and it slithers from your grasp and slides softly into the water. Water moccasin. Fear finds you at last. Terror, which stood aloof when you fled the executioner's bullets, now embraces you with clammy unction. A water moccasin. The deadly cottonmouth. Now each branch and root seems to writhe under your glance. The swamp is undulating with certain death. You plunge on through the dark, stinking ooze, on and on, tripping, stumbling, never stopping, for terror rides your back, flogging you with a whiplash of fear.
Master Peyton, fiddle's a fiddle and jig time. You just drink this here yop tea, Master Peyton.
Thank you. Thank you. Jethro.
Yes, sir, Master Peyton.
What are you doing here?
I live here.
You live... Where am I? What happened?
I was paddling my dugout home through the swamp with a mess of catfish. I sees you lying out there on the bank in front of my cabin.
Jethro, I heard... I thought you were dead.
Of course you thought Jethro was dead. You knew he had consumption when you sold him. You knew he couldn't last long, and he wasn't earning his keep. His wife and his daughter had carried on some at first, but after a while they calmed down. And last you'd heard, Jethro was dead.
You thought I was dead, Master Peyton? Why, sir, don't you know what's happened to me? I'm free. I'm free at last.
So, news travels fast. Even in the middle of this backwoods swamp, this lonely black has heard of Abe Lincoln's traitorous Emancipation Proclamation. And they believe it with the faith of children.
Yes, sir, I'm free. I expect pretty soon my woman, my little gal, come along and join me.
Yes, of course they will, Jethro.
I say, Master Peyton, is they well?
Yes, indeed, they're both fine. Your daughter's growing into a young beauty. Miss Farquhar's brought her into the kitchen, beginning to train her for the house.
Well, what do you think of that? Mm-hmm. And my woman, she still sings pretty?
Yes, Jethro. Sundays at meeting time, we can hear all the way up to the big house.
That woman's voice is prettier than all the angels.
Jethro, I don't know how to say this, but I really was sorry about having to sell you. But there wasn't anything else.
I understand, Master Peyton. Don't pay it no mind. I done forgive you long ago.
You have?
Sure. Don't the Lord tell us to forgive those who trespass against us? Don't the Lord promise us we shall be free? Don't you worry none about it, Master Peyton. Here now, quiet that spot. Quiet, chicken, quiet you. Must have heard a razorback in the brush. No, sirree. Look, Master Peyton. There's a horse coming down the road.
A horse?
Look there. Soldier. One of our soldiers, corporal, look like.
Jethro, you got to hide me.
Why's I got to hide you, Master Peyton?
Don't ask so many questions, you insolent...
Master Peyton, you forget, I'm free now.
Well, then, as an old friend of mine, please don't ask any questions. Just hide me. Don't tell that soldier anything.
Well, sure. I reckon I can do that for an old friend, Master Peyton. Here. You get down on this here bed. That's it. Put the covers over the side. There you are. Snug as a tick in a rabbit's ear.
Remember, don't tell him anything.
Have you come this far just to be turned in by a wool-gathering black who talks crazy? If Jethro knew this gray-clad corporal was really a Union lieutenant, he'd guarantee his freedom by turning you in. Even so, he bears you a big enough grudge to turn you in anyway. Unless, of course, he's planning to dispose of you himself. Yes, that's it. That's why he talks so silly about the Lord and forgiveness. He's going to do you in himself.
Well, if you run into him, don't tell him I was looking for him.
Yes, I remember not telling.
Just keep minding your own business, Uncle. You live longer. Get up there.
Yes, I sure will. You can come out now, Master Peyton. I declare, I don't understand none of this. You says not tell him you're here. He says not tell you he's been here. What's this all about, Master Peyton?
Oh, it's nothing, Jethro. Nothing. I owe the man some money. I'm not ready to pay it yet.
Oh, I see. I wouldn't know about that. Money's something never bothered me like it bothers some. Money and me's always been strangers.
What's he mean by that? Money's never bothered me like it's bothered some. What's he picking up that knife for?
Jethro, what are you going to do with that knife?
Oh, I was just fixing to slit up some of them catfish got in the dugout. Look like you could do with a little food, Master Peyton.
Oh, no, thank you, Jethro. I really got to be on my way. I want to get home by sundown if I can.
Sure wouldn't be no bother to cut up a couple of calves.
No, thank you, old friend. If you'll just tell me which way I should go to get home.
Huh? Well, I don't rightly know, Master Peyton. I reckon from the way the sun's reclining, be down the road that way. Quite a tolerable piece.
Yeah, that should be about right.
I never been back, you know. I never tried to go back since I've been free.
Yes, I know.
But I reckon it won't be long till my woman, my little gal, comes here to me.
Of course.
If you get back, Master Peyton, if and you see him, you tell him I'm here waiting for him, you hear?
Yeah, I'll do that, Jethro. I'll do that.
You get away from there fast, the shells of the road crunching under your muddy boots. That grinning savage standing in the doorway of the shack, the knife in his hands. And each moment until the road bends and cuts off the cabin from view, you fear he'll come after you, the knife poised to plunge in your back, to pay you for the thrust you gave him when you sent him away to die. But he's still standing, grinning foolishly and waving as you turn the bend. Now you feel safe, but only for a moment. Then you hear a sound. The sound of a horse. It must be the corporal in gray from the 5th Massachusetts Regulars. He's coming back down the road, searching for you, hounding you, coming to take you back to Owl Creek Bridge, back to a rope that won't break under your weight. You walk faster and faster, and always the sound is there, growing louder and louder. And you run as fast as you can down the shell road, which stretches clear to the horizon between the green walls of scrubby pines. How long have you been running down this endless road? It's dark now. Is it night? Or has the blood trapped in your head by the suffocating rope at last burst into your congested eyeballs and blinded you? Will it next pour from your swollen and bruised neck into your brain, stopping all sensation, instantly bringing to a welcome end this day of agony and flight? Ridiculous fantasies of fatigue and fear. You can see the darkness is the black of a sudden summer storm. That lightning flash clearly shows the white road ahead and the black silhouettes of trees along the sides. And since you're sure that you can see, the other senses return. You hear the rumble of the thunder. You feel the insupportable ache of your straining lungs, the leaden weight of your tired feet. And now the patter of rain, first washing the stinging sweat from your scratched and bitten face, now pounding harder, flowing down across your hatless head, matting your hair, slowing your headlong gait to a dog trot. Another flash of lightning directly overhead. For an instant, you see the soldiers of Owl Creek Bridge standing at the side of the road, rifles leveled, their eyes boring down the sights, aiming at your heart. Again, you're running, and the rain has turned to hail. Pellets as big as hominy beat down on you, pound your swollen, bruised neck, hammer at your countless cuts. Again, the lightning. And on the other side of the road, the gray-clad corporal sits astride his horse waiting for you.
No, you can't get me now! No!
This bolt of lightning strikes a tree ahead of you, and in the white blinding light stands Jethro, black and grinning, knife raised in the air.
No, Jethro! Forgive me! Forgive me!
He's gone, and now you see dangling from each tree along the road a noose swinging in the wind. Wherever you turn, wherever you look, a noose waiting for you, a noose which wriggles like a water moccasin. You are standing on the green lawn of your plantation before the high-columned entrance. The storm is over. The clouds are black and menacing all around the horizon, but through a break in the sky overhead, glorious sunlight streams down, bathing your garden and your house in heavenly light. You are home. And now you hear a rustle of crinoline, and down from the wide portico steps your beloved wife. She walks across the wide lawn, arms outstretched.
Peyton, my dear, you're back. Just as you promised you'd be.
For this moment, you have endured the agonies of this day. And were those agonies multiplied 1,000 times, they would be small price for the benison of this breast, the sanctuary of these arms, the security of these lips. You step forward to fold your wife in your embrace.
The rope stretched tight, sang like a bowstring. Peyton Farquhar was dead. His body, with a broken neck, swung gently from side to side beneath the timbers of Owl Creek Bridge.
Escape is produced and directed by William N. Robeson, and tonight brought you An Occurrence at Owl Creek Bridge by Ambrose Bierce in a radio adaptation written by Mr. Robeson. The part of Peyton Farquhar was played by Harry Bartell. The narrators were Bill Conrad and Bill Johnstone. Jethro was played by Louis Van Rooten. The special musical score was conceived and conducted by Cy Feuer.
From 75 years ago, December 10th, 1947, Escape here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thank you for making us a part of your day. Please thank this station and support their advertisers. It's their kindness and courtesy that allows us to be with you each and every time we roll around here. Also, visit our friend Ted at radiomemories.com, who supplies shows on cassette, CD, or flash drive for your computer at a very reasonable price and in the best quality available. That's at radiomemories.com. Our website is classicradio.stream, where you can stream our shows on demand, learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. You can contact me there, find our social media links there, and you can also buy me a coffee. That buy me a coffee money is what helps us acquire additional classic radio collections and also helps us continue the distribution and keep our distribution channels up and running. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station. Have a great Saturday, won't you please?